22 most unique instruments ever made. Life would be very dull without music, and it has the ability to bring everyone together. It helps us to express happiness, sadness, and a plethora of other emotions. Over the course of time, people have created the most incredible and unusual instruments, and today, we're going to have a look at just a few of them. Number 22, the Chapman Stick. Or you can just call it the Stick. It is an electrical instrument created by Emmett Chapman in the early 70s. It is a member of the guitar family, as you can clearly see, and features 10 to 12 individually tuned strings. Chapman sticks are often used to play bass lines, melody lines, or chords in music recordings, and the instrument is able to cover several musical parts at the same time. Number 21, Contrabass Balalochia. This obscure-looking instrument comes from Russia and was developed in the late 17th century. It features a triangular-shaped body and is played the same way you would play a guitar. They come in all sorts of sizes, and the larger ones have extension legs so it can rest on the floor. Number 20, octobass. This instrument has been around since 1850 and came into being thanks to the efforts of Jean-Baptiste Villiers, who was a massive fan of big string instruments. The octobass is so big, it is impossible to play it with your hands, hence why it comes standard with elaborate foot pedals to make playing it possible. Number 19, zither. Our next instrument comes from Europe and is a string instrument that is often depicted in folk songs from Austria, Hungary, Croatia, and Slovenia. The word zither is a German interpretation of the Greek word cithara, which is also where our modern word for guitar originates from. Number 18, nose flute. It's hard to imagine an instrument that requires one's nose to act as the mouthpiece, but here we go. This instrument is found in many spots around the world, including Polynesia, China, India, and parts of Africa. In New Zealand, they make nose flutes with a double opening for each nostril. By leaving the mouth open, it provides a variable resonance chamber. The instrument is fast disappearing around the world, and a plastic version was designed in 1904 called the human tone. But whether people actually still use them is highly doubtful. Number 17, HurdyGurdy. Just the name of the instrument brings a smile to one's face. The HurdyGurdy is a highly intricate instrument that works by turning a crank to sound the strings. It's the only instrument in the world that works by turning a crank. The crank turns a wheel, which in turn rubs the strings, kinda like a violin, which then creates the music. Pretty impressive, considering the HurdyGurdy was invented over 1,000 years ago. Number 16, Theremin. This interesting little box was created in 1928 by Leon Theremin. It is one of the earliest electronic instruments that didn't require physical contact to work. The antenna of this instrument is used to sense the relative position of the user's hands and send signals through a loudspeaker. The quirky instrument has been used in a few movie soundtracks. Number 15, stylophone. Around 3 million of these stylophones were sold in the late 60s and early 70s, mostly to children. But there was the occasional music maker who purchased one. It was invented by Brian Jarvis in 1967, and it is an analog Stylus-operated synthesizer. David Bowie played one in his debut single, Space Oddity. Number 14, Pyrophone Organ. This monster of an instrument is also called the fire organ, or the explosion organ, and that's because it's powered by combustion. In order for the instrument to work, there has to be fire involved. It's perfectly safe, so they say, and can work with propane or gasoline. The notes are made possible due to the explosions, and the instrument is heated from the inside. Number 13, Picasso Guitar. It is easy to see why the guitar got the name Picasso Guitar, because it bears a striking resemblance to the cubist works of the great artist himself, Pablo Picasso. It was designed by Manzier, and is quite a lot like a harp guitar, sporting 4 necks, 2 sound holes, and a total of 42 strings. Number 12, sea organ. Music and nature come together perfectly with the sea organ. It is located on the seafront of Zadar in Croatia and features pipes underneath the promenade. As the waves crash into the sides, the most beautiful sounds are created, drawing in a lot of tourists and locals alike. Number 11, glass harmonica. Created by inventor and statesman Benjamin Franklin, the glass harmonica is a thing of beauty. This rare and fragile instrument is made up of a series of bowls, and it has been played by George Washington and Marie Antoinette. It made its appearance alongside many well-known artists today, including Linda Ronstadt, David Gilmour, and Bjork. Many composers wrote specifically for this instrument, including Mozart and Beethoven. In its most basic form, the instrument works in a similar vein to how we run our fingers over a glass to create sound, although the glass bowls are connected by an iron spindle which is rotated by a foot pedal. You can play up to 10 notes at a time, thanks to it being positioned horizontally. Number 10. Lamellophone. Also called the Jew harp, this little instrument has nothing to do with Jewish people, and it doesn't look like much of a harp. Some believed it derived the name Jew harp purely by being misspelt somewhere along the line. This small instrument is held in the mouth, while your fingers move the middle tongue piece to produce sounds. As can be expected by such a simple design, sounds are limited and the pitch is monotone. During the 18th century, some were made with 2 tongues to get a variety of pitch. It is traced back to Asia and entered Europe sometime in the 14th century, with some believing it to be the oldest instrument in the world. Number 9. Sousaphone. This insane-looking instrument is a type of plasma speaker that is a kind of solid-state Tesla coil that has been modified to emit musical tones by modulating its spark output. The sound you'll hear is a low-fidelity square wave, very much like an analog synthesizer. Number 8. Musical Road. Japan can thank Hokkaido Industrial Research Institute for their very unusual instrument, a musical road. They carved out thousands of grooves on the road, so that when vehicles drove over the road, they would play a tune. The road was created by Mr. Shinada, who says the narrower the grooves, the higher the pitch and vice versa. You can only hear the music if you drive over it at a certain speed, and there are 3 places in Japan where you can enjoy the melodic roads, each playing a different song. Number 7. Singing Ringing Tree. There is an incredible sculpture over in East Lancashire, England, that is known as the Singing Ringing Tree. It was designed by Mike Tonkanen and Anna Liu and is made up of steel pipes of different lengths placed in various positions. When the wind whips through the past of the structure, it makes the most eerie noises. There also used to be a kids series from the late 60s to early 70s called the Singing Ringing Tree, which was said just to be as eerie as the structure itself. Number 6. Atlantic City Convention Hall Organ. This massive pipe organ sits in the main auditorium of the Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. The hall actually forms part of the organ itself, and the hall sits 41,000 people. The organ is made up of 33,112 pipes, and if you were to take a tour of the entire organ, it would take you 4.5 hours. Number 5. The Vegetable Orchestra. It's not just one instrument that makes this entry unique, but all of them. The Vegetable Orchestra literally performs with instruments made from fresh vegetables. Founded in 1998, this Vietnamese ensemble uses whatever veggies are in season, which means their sound changes all the time. Depending on the type of veggie available, you could hear a bit of contemporary music, jazz, house, and even electronic. Number 4. The Cat Piano. Yeah, you heard that one correctly, the Cat Piano. These days, this of course would never be considered, but in the 17th century, well, things were just a little bit different. A Jesuit scholar named Antinasius Kishur thought up of this bizarre instrument. Okay, at least you know the cats were happy, but not for long, because his thoughts were to take the cats' tails and insert them into narrow sheaths, which were then pricked by hammers. The cats would cry out in pain, and the tone would differ according to each cat. Apparently, the purpose of this instrument was to lift the spirit of the melancholy prince. Happy to say there's no historic evidence that this instrument was actually created, but it's still a bizarre thing to think of, isn't it? Number 3. Jocko Keyboard. This looks like a checkerboard game gone wrong. It was designed by Paul von Jocko, and in a nutshell, it was meant to make it possible for pianists to play pieces which wouldn't be possible on a regular keyboard. It may look more challenging to play, but it's easier when changing octaves, as the player only needs to move their hands up and down, and not learn new finger rings. Number 2. Weird Fence. In this case, basically any weird fence becomes a musical instrument for fensologist John Rose. He's an Australian musician that plays on any type of fence available. He uses a bow to perform, and he's been doing it for over 30 years. Number 1. 3D Various. We've taken in a number of instruments from days gone by, but how incredible is this 3D printed violin? This beautiful and intricate design is thanks to French violinist and engineer Laurent Bernardac, and it just launched on Kickstarter. It is an electric 3D printed violin called 3D Various, and it's been featured on many websites, news programs, and the like. The design is based on the real Stradivarius violin. It's printed on a solid piece of stereolithography printing process and is designed for optimal sound wave flow, giving the musician playing the instrument a lot of control over the sound. Which of these unique instruments would you love to get an opportunity to play? Let us know in the comments down below and subscribe to our channel for more daily videos. Thanks for watching.